Basically, two big topics this evening. The president, what's going on in Manhattan, and then what's going on in our streets more broadly in America. Excuse me. And I want to start with the latter. What you are seeing taking place in our universities, our colleges, even our media, and in our streets, is not something that is spontaneous in America. It's something that's been heavily funded. It's something that's being heavily organized by terrorist regimes around the world, by Hamas, and by dark money groups fronting, listen to this, for billionaire Democrats. I'm still amazed that people keep saying this is funded, it's very well organized, the tents all look, okay, fine. I explained this on Saturday night's program on Fox. And so we're going to take some time to go over this so you know exactly what's going on. There's actually more listeners to this program on the radio than any show on Fox or cable, period. And so I want to get into this. Who's funding these violent people at our universities? And they're not all students. Let's get started. Cut 20, go.
I was in Israel last week, as you well know, and watched some of the activities that took place there as a result of the Biden administration policies of appeasement with Iran and intentionally funding Iran to the tune of over $100 billion. None of this would be happening if Donald Trump were president. Iran was broke on its back and about to be overthrown by its own people. But I keep hearing our own media, news people ask, these riots, these violent people at Columbia University or our other universities and in our streets and all the rest of it, who's funding these people? Who's funding these people? You know, it's a funny thing. I thought it was the job of the media to figure out the who and why, so I'll do it. And never again do I want to hear anybody in the media say, who's funding these people? First of all, I've done this before, but I'm going to do it tonight, and I'm going to expand upon it. You want to know who's funding these people? The Democrat Party and the terrorist regimes. What? You have a fusion of Marxists. You have a fusion with Islamists. A complicated matrix and network of Democrat Party billionaires and millionaires and dark money, including Soros, including the Tides Foundation, among others. And you have Hamas funding, the Muslim Brotherhood, and others. Also a funding network, and Qatar, which is funding colleges and universities. In other words, the enemies of America. And this has had an enormous effect on our foreign policy toward Israel. Their attacks on Netanyahu, the goal to overthrow the Israeli government for the purpose of installing a puppet regime that will bend to the Democrat Party donors, Hamas, and the enemy of Israel, and it's all being done right in front of our eyes. And if we had a real media, you'd know a lot about it. So let me cobble this together from certain media reports and others and tell you what's taking place here. Unheard, a fantastic site. Here's a piece by Park McDonald from just a few months ago, and I can't read the whole thing. The division between the activist left and the party establishment is little more than a politically useful fiction. In reality, the radical cadres are bankrolled by the same nexus of progressive oligarchs and dark money, that is, dark money slush funds that finance the party establishment. The DNC protest, for example, was organized by two progressive Jewish NGOs, Jewish Voice for Peace, and If Not Now, the same groups behind a rowdy pre-ceasefire protest at the U.S. Capitol, at which more than 300 people were arrested. Both groups are funded by an array of big money progressive donors, including George Soros, the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation, and the Tides Network. These are charitable wings of major financial institutions as well. Part of Vanguard, Fidelity, Morgan Stanley, another group called 1630 Fund, another big group called Arabella Advisors, an umbrella group, a Democrat Party, billionaire, millionaire group the head of the octopus that pushes monies into these organizations. Soros, of course, is the most prominent individual Democrat donor in the country. He personally spent $170 million to get Democrats elected in 2022 midterms. His nonprofit spent at least another $140 million. Arabella Advisors is less well known, but maybe just as influential. It's run by Clinton World insider Eric Kessler. The for-profit consultancy manages a vast and opaque empire of funds and nonprofits aligned with the Democrat Party. Its role, in essence, is to allow wealthy donors to hide their donations. And they're hiding hundreds of millions of dollars worth. Scratch a nationally prominent pro-Palestinian organization, and you're likely to find Democratic oligarch money somewhere. The radicals and the Democratic establishment work together towards shared ends, even when they're fighting. This is especially true when it comes to Israel. The Biden administration's allegedly pro-Israel stance is more rhetoric than reality, a pose adopted to box critics into a corner, constrain Israel's ability to act independently of the United States, and obscure the true nature of the White House's Middle East policy. That policy, as Edward Lutwak wrote in these pages, is to fulfill Barack Obama's ill-conceived desire to distance the United States from Israel and Saudi Arabia and to reconcile with Iran. Plus, at the same time, as it is granting defense credits to Israel, the White House is also funding Iran. I want to thank our friend Charlie Kirk, who put it all together here. What are we talking about? John Kirby said the other day to Peter Doocy, we're not doing that. What are you talking about? This guy Kirby is the worst of the propagandists. $10 billion in November 2023, Biden regime approved a sanctions waiver that unlocks upwards of $10 billion in frozen funds of Iraqi payments for Iranian energy. $6 billion September 2023 as part of a prisoner swap. Blinken ensured Iranian funds would be moved into a restricted fund for humanitarian trade. Oh, yeah, right. $10 billion. July 2023, Blinken signed a national security waiver allowing Iraq to deposit payments for Iranian energy into non-Iraqi banks in third countries instead of into restricted accounts. $3.42 billion. August 2021, the IMF sent $3.42 billion to Iran in special drawing rights. The Biden administration had the authority to stop it, but did not. 80 plus billion since 2021. Iran's oil exports have surged, breaking records because the Biden administration has eased enforcement of sanctions, allowing an explosion in illicit purchases, mostly to communist China. 3.8 billion since 2021. Iran turned to the sale of petrochemicals to avoid a Trump-era sanction. Sales have surged thanks to Biden. 1.6 billion since 2021. The Trump administration imposed sanctions on Iran's steel industry, which the Biden administration has not enforced. As Kirk says, the Biden administration says its commitment to Israel is ironclad, but apparently so is its commitment to funding Iranian terrorism. Even on military matters, continues the piece, the U.S. has tried to split the difference between Israel and the Iranian axis of resistance. Since October 7, the latter, especially Iran and its prized proxy Hezbollah, has balanced vituperative criticism of Israel with claims that Hamas acted alone and demands that the U.S. restrain Israel from escalating beyond Gaza. The White House has complied, demanding that Israel not carry out any significant operations against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and leaking to the American press that it views Israel's relations to Hezbollah daily cross-border attacks as an attempt by Jerusalem to create a pretext for a wider war that could draw the U.S. in. The U.S. has, moreover, publicly backed the Iranian and Hezbollah claims that Hamas acted independently and without their knowledge on October 7, despite early public assessments from former U.S. intelligence officials that the sophistication and complexity of the attack was beyond what Hamas could do on its own. And it's now been proven that Hamas had the backing and training of Iran. The U.S., in other words, has effectively boxed Israel in. Having been struck hard by an Iranian proxy, Israel can attempt to eliminate that proxy on an accelerated timetable at the cost of massive international outrage and to limited strategic benefit. But it is being prevented by U.S. from taking any proactive measures to reestablish deterrence against Tehran, even more recently. Same thing. Now, read in this light, the oligarch-funded protests against Biden are somewhat less mysterious. They are, in fact, a useful form of Kabuki. Biden pretends to be the best friend of Israel, that is, Israel has ever had, while the left pretends to hate him for it. Both sides benefit. For Biden, pressure from the left gives him leverage to turn around to the Israelis and say, you better listen to me, or I'll have to cave to my party's flank, while offering his party's Jewish and pro-Israel voters a show of the president's resolute commitment to the Jewish state, even as he courts Iran. And this pose is especially important in justifying the latter policy, since Americans remain overwhelmingly supportive of Israel and overwhelmingly hostile toward Iran and its terrorist proxies. The left, meanwhile, gets to demonstrate its principled independence from the Democratic establishment while setting the stage to extract concessions within the party and party-adjacent bureaucracies, set-asides for Arab, Palestinian, and Muslim staffers, a national strategy to counter Islamophobia, presumably be administered by professional anti-Islamophobia activists, and a general resetting of the Overton window for the next round of conflict. Plus, there's the continued channeling of nominally anti-system energies into a web of party-controlled nonprofits.
All right, this is where I want us to stop. A web of party-controlled nonprofits. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, ladies and gentlemen, in dark money that is being used to fund these riots, this violence. Marxists and Islamists, Hamas set up the Students for Justice in Palestine, which is on over 200 campuses, which is leading these movements on these campuses. They're all coming together, all these organizations. It's a, as I said in the program, and I'm saying now, it is a complex network and web of organizations set up purposely to confound and confuse. And I want to discuss it further when we return, but you can see the impact. You can see the impact. And Joe Biden's propaganda against Netanyahu, his propaganda against the state of Israel, his use of Hamas statistics. Blinken today issuing a report on human rights around the world, has as its number one abuser the state of Israel, not North Korea, and what it's done to its people, not China and the Uyghurs and the massive murder of those individuals. And I could go on and on. No. It's Israel. Israel's at the front of the report. It's a 103-page report. I just looked at it. Israel's under constant, unrelenting attack by this administration, by the State Department, by John Kirby, under unrelenting attack by CNN and MSNBC and the Islamists that work for them, or the Islamic sympathizers that work for them. The New York Times and the Washington Post, they've created this environment of Jew hatred in this country and America hatred in this country between the Marxists and the Islamists and the Democrat parties and the umbrella organization. That's why I wrote the book, The Democrat Party Hates America. That's why I wrote the book before that, American Marxism. It's all quite prescient, to be perfectly honest with you. It's all laid out. And George Soros has a fundamental role in funding the Tides Foundation. George Soros is very close to the Blinken family. These things aren't just happening. These things are organized. They are funded. They are manned. These organizations didn't just spring up. So you have the overlay of the Hamas funding network, which is funded by the Muslim Brotherhood. They're all funded by Qatar and some of these other organizations and states. You have the domestic Marxist groups. And if you think about it, so I'll be the first one to explain this, even though I mentioned it last week. The riots that took place in 2020, it's the same people. It's the Islamists and the Marxists. It's the same people, just a different cause.